on air about a female journalist. Laurence Fox had apologised for making a series of personal remarks about the political correspondent Ava Evans. Just hours before his sacking, Mr. Fox had been arrested by police investigating separate allegations of conspiring to commit criminal damage to ULEZ cameras. Also sacked by GB News was the commentator Calvin Robinson, who had publicly supported Dan Wootton, the presenter on whose programme those comments about Miss Evans had been made. Well, GB News said in a statement, Laurence Fox and Calvin Robinson were both suspended last week pending internal investigations that have now concluded. As of today, GB News has ended its employment relationship with Laurence Fox and Calvin Robinson. The internal investigation into Dan Wootton, they say, continues. And Calvin Robinson joins us now. So can you tell us the reasons for your dismissal? Why exactly were you sacked?
I wish I knew, Mark. The reasons they're giving me are gross misconduct for my tweets. But my tweets were supportive of my colleagues and supportive of the station and the project or the mission that the station is supposed to be on. So I'm honestly at a loss to answer that question. I mean,
isn't in truth, it's because you broadly supported the presenters who were responsible for that misogynistic diatribe about that female journalist?
Well, it has nothing to do with the diatribe, as you call it. What happened in that conversation was that Laurence Fox was trying to be funny. It was inappropriate for television, and he should have been reprimanded for it, and he apologised for it and recognised that, quite rightly so. However, Dan Wootton was the host of the show, didn't need to be suspended. I suspect he's going to be fired early next week. I supported Dan as a colleague of his, and I was on the show at the time. And none of that has anything to do with what Laurence was saying about Ava, despite the fact that the wider conversation here was actually about men's mental health, actually. This is why the topic was on air, because she was attacking men's mental health. And look what's happened.
I want to come on to that point in just a second, Calvin, but you say that he was trying to be funny, and you've said GB News should be a chance to have conversations you can't have on other channels. So that includes a conversation about a female journalist that included the sentiment, if not the exact words, who would want to sleep with that, and described her as a little woman. I mean, are those the sort of conversations that you want to have or be had on GB News?
No, I already said that. I don't know why you want to make it about that. This is the problem. You want to make it all about what Laurence said to Ava. It's nothing to do with that. There's a wider conversation to be had here. I don't think that conversation was appropriate. I wouldn't have had that conversation. But this is his style, and they knew that when they hired him. So they knew exactly what they were getting. So which brings the question, why did they fire him and say they're a station for free speech when it's something that he said that they fired him for? Also, the fact of the matter is, it is an offensive conversation, but it's just a conversation. Either we stand for free speech, in which some people will take offence, some people won't, or we don't, right? If there is no obvious line, where is that line?
You see, the importance of that conversation is that it goes to the heart of what you think and the channel thinks free speech is. I mean, Laurence Fox, as you just mentioned, Calvin, said she was basically dismissive of men's mental health issues. But what part of free speech includes a hate-filled rant about a woman because you don't agree with what was said about men's mental health? How does that even fit in with any description of free speech?
Because all this is just... First of all, there's a lot of hysteria around this conversation, but there's a lot of hypocrisy as well, because this conversation has been had on the opposite end of the spectrum many times on TV. There are clips on social media circulating right now of other people saying, I would not shag him, talking about a man. And that seems to be appropriate. So this isn't a conversation about feminism or equality. What we're seeing here is that this is about crossing a line. And that line is,
and that line was crossed. You would agree that line was crossed?
My point is that I would not say that. Absolutely wouldn't say that. But that's not the point.
So you don't think the line was crossed? You see, I'm trying to get to the heart of what free speech... Does free speech include the right to offend and be misogynistic and be hate-filled in your speech about a specific woman?
Is it hate-filled? I think the wider conversation was, and the conversation you're avoiding, was men's mental health. Someone being dismissive about men's mental health. A known misandrist shutting down the conversation and being derogatory towards men in their mental health. When we know it's the number one cause of death. How come whenever I bring up men's mental health, you want to shut me down and go back to, but is it what Lawrence said? Is that appropriate? This is a really twisted conversation.
No, it's not, because my point was that Lawrence Fox made the point that she was dismissive of men's mental health. But what part of free speech includes a hate-filled rant in response to her talking about mental health? That was my point. But listen, there's one broader point here, Calvin, because we haven't got much time. Isn't the truth that you have conversations, and heavily opinionated conversations, on GB News, some unchecked and unbalanced, isn't the point that that's okay if you cease to call it a news channel?
I don't think it should be called a news channel, actually, because most of it's commentary. We only had the bulletins installed late on. But the point is, GB News offers a different perspective, and it is balanced. There's always someone from the right and someone from the left, but we have conversations about topics that Sly News would never have, the BBC tries to avoid, and actually there's a silent majority in this company who feel unheard. They feel politically homeless, and now they feel media homeless, and that's not good. It's not good for the people. That's what GB News was supposed to be there for, the people, that people like you disregard and look down your noses at. The metropolitan liberal elite, the Westminster bubble of Sly News and BBC.
Well, with the greatest respect, Calvin, we've invited you on. So I don't think we actually turn our noses up at anything. But I should just make the point before I go.
Lawrence Fox's comments. You haven't asked me about my firing. You haven't asked me about any of that.
I should just make the point that it's not Sly News, it's Sky News. And thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.